We often think of 2025 as the year of artificial intelligence, of quantum leaps in computing, and the race to Mars. We look up. We look forward. But while the world was busy looking at the stars, a different group of pioneers was looking down, sifting through the dirt, and rewriting the story of who we are. This year has been, without exaggeration, the single greatest year for archaeology in a century. It's been a year where the Earth finally decided to give up its most jealous secrets. We aren't just talking about a few pottery shards or a rusty coin. We are talking about lost metropolises emerging from the jungle canopy, legendary kings waking from a 3,000-year slumber, and battlefields that still echo with the clash of bronze. From the suffocating humidity of the Amazon rainforest to the frozen, wind-swept edges of Antarctica, and right beneath the busy, coffee-fueled streets of downtown London, the past has risen to meet us. In this mega episode, we are going to travel to 20 distinct locations. We are going to peel back the layers of time. We aren't going to lecture you with dry academic dates or complex chemical analysis. Instead, we are going to walk through these ruins together. We are going to touch the stone, smell the stale air of sealed tombs, and stand in the shoes of the people who lived, loved, and died millennia ago. Before we dive deeper, ignite that like button and help uncover these stories for more people. Also, tell me in the comments where you are listening from, what time it is there. And a quick note. The visuals are here to add context, but they aren't necessary to follow along. Buckle up. We are starting with the biggest headline of the year in the land where archaeology began. Our journey begins in the blinding heat of North Africa. We are in Egypt. Specifically, we are standing in the Valley of the Kings, Luxor. For over 100 years, since Howard Carter broke the seal on Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922, the world has believed that the valley had nothing left to give. Tourists have walked over these limestone paths for decades, millions of feet shuffling over the dust, convinced that every inch of sand had been sifted, every secret exposed. Archaeologists famously declared the site exhausted. They told us the golden age of discovery was over, that we were just sweeping up the crumbs left by the giants of the 19th century. But in early 2025, that assumption was shattered. And it happened in the most unexpected way possible. Imagine standing there right now. It's 110 degrees Fahrenheit. The air is dry, filled with that ancient dust that coats the back of your throat and settles into the creases of your clothes. A joint Egyptian-American team was clearing debris near the famous tomb of Hatshepsut. They weren't looking for a king. They were doing routine maintenance, trying to divert floodwaters to protect existing tombs. But then, the ground-penetrating radar, think of it like a sonar for the Earth, hit an anomaly. Usually these blips are nothing. A pocket of air, a pile of loose rocks, or maybe a stash of workers' tools left behind 3,000 years ago. But this was different. It was a void. A massive, rectangular void deep beneath the bedrock, hidden under tons of limestone chippings that had been dumped there by previous excavations. They started digging. It took 3 months of grueling labor to clear the vertical shaft. The anticipation was electric. And then they hit a door, a sealed limestone door, still plastered shut, bearing a cartouche that hadn't been seen on a royal seal in this valley for 3 millennia. It wasn't a minor noble. It wasn't a high priest. It was Thutmose II. Now, to understand why this is a total game changer, we have to look at the soap opera of the 18th dynasty. Thutmose II has always been the forgotten man of Egyptian history. He was the husband of the incredibly famous Queen Hatshepsut, the woman who would go on to declare herself pharaoh and rule as a man. For centuries, historians painted Thutmose II as a weak, frail king who died young, a puppet who was totally overshadowed by his ambitious wife. He was a footnote in the history books, a speed bump on Hatshepsut's road to glory. But the discovery of his intact tomb in 2025 has completely flipped that script. When the team inserted a fiber optic camera through a small hole in the door, just like Carter did a century ago, they didn't see a modest burial. They saw gold. Glinting, shimmering gold piled to the ceiling. Let's walk inside. The heavy stone door is rolled away, and the first thing that hits you is the air. It's stagnant. It carries a smell that is hard to describe, a mix of cedar wood, natron salt, and a strange, spicy scent of dried resins and flowers that have been waiting in the dark for 3,500 years. It's the smell of time itself. The antechamber is packed. But it's not just piles of gold. It's the nature of the objects that is shocking. They found war chariots, not the flimsy ceremonial ones used for parades, but battle-hardened chariots. The leather tires show signs of wear and tear. The axles are reinforced. Beside them are racks of composite bows, quivers full of arrows, and khopesh swords made of bronze that still hold their lethal edge. This changes everything we thought we knew. The frail king was a warrior. On the walls, the murals are as vibrant as if they were painted yesterday. The blues of the Nile, the ochre of the desert, the deep blacks of the underworld. They depict Thutmose II leading armies into Nubia and the Levant. We see him standing tall, smiting enemies, distinct and powerful. This wasn't a man hiding behind his wife's skirt. This was a military leader who likely laid the groundwork for the empire his wife and son would later expand. Moving deeper into the burial chamber, we find the sarcophagus. It is carved from red quartzite, glowing under the electric work lights of the excavation team. It's massive, and around it the floor is littered with shabti figures, those little blue glazed statues meant to serve the king in the afterlife. There aren't just a few dozen. There are over 1,000 of them, an army of servants for the next world. But the most human moment of this discovery, the detail that made headlines around the world and brought tears to the eyes of the lead archaeologist, wasn't the gold or the weapons. It was a simple, polished wooden box found right next to the royal coffin. Inside the box was a dried wreath of flowers, delphiniums and cornflowers, their colors faded to a pale brown, but their shape perfectly preserved. Nestled with the flowers was a small ivory game board, similar to the ancient game of senet. Inscribed on the box in delicate hieroglyphs were the words, "For my brother who walks with Ra." The handwriting style matches the monuments of Hatshepsut. This single object adds a layer of complex humanity to the stone-cold history. It suggests that despite the power struggles, despite her eventual takeover of his throne, there was a bond there. Maybe it was political respect, maybe it was familial duty, or maybe, just maybe, it was genuine affection. The 2025 discovery of Thutmose II's tomb does more than just give us new artifacts for the Grand Egyptian Museum. It forces us to rewrite the biography of a king. We used to think of him as a placeholder. Now, we see a warrior, a builder, and a central figure in the greatest dynasty Egypt ever saw. The Valley of the Kings was never empty. It was just waiting. And as the team begins the decade-long process of cataloging the thousands of objects found inside, we are realizing that this is just the first chapter of a new history book. But while the sands of Egypt were giving up a king across the Atlantic Ocean, the dense green canopy of the Mexican jungle was hiding something even bigger. Something that makes the skyscrapers of New York City look like a village. Leaving the dry heat of Egypt, we travel west to the steamy, dense jungles of Campeche, Mexico. Here, the humidity hits you like a physical wall. The air buzzes with the sound of insects, and the canopy above is so thick it blocks out the sun. For centuries, locals farmers have worked this land, planting corn and beans, completely unaware that they were walking on top of a sleeping giant. This is the site of discovery number 2, the lost megacity of Valeriana. If you haven't heard of this yet, it's because until 2025, it didn't exist on any map. It wasn't found by an explorer with a machete hacking through the vines. It was found by a computer. Scientists used a technology called LiDAR. If you're not a science geek, think of LiDAR as a magic filter for the planet. A plane flies over the jungle, shooting millions of laser pulses down at the ground. These lasers can penetrate the gaps in the leaves and bounce back to the sensor. When the data is processed, the computer can digitally erase the trees. What's left is a naked 3D map of the ground surface. When the team looked at the LiDAR scans of this remote patch of Mexican forest, they expected to see a few house mounds or maybe a small shrine. Instead, they dropped their coffee mugs. The screen lit up with structures. Not 10, not 100, but 6,674 structures. Valeriana isn't just a ruin, it's a megalopolis. It rivals the famous city of Tikal in Guatemala, which was previously considered the superpower of the Maya world. Let's take a virtual tour of what this place looked like at its peak, around 750 AD. Imagine the jungle is gone. Instead, you are standing in a sprawling urban landscape that stretches as far as the eye can see. This was home to perhaps 50,000 people. You are walking down a sakbe, a white road. These were the highways of the Maya, raised causeways paved with white limestone plaster that would have reflected the moonlight, glowing like ribbons in the night. The road is wide enough for 10 people to walk abreast. To your left, you see a massive reservoir. The Maya were masters of hydraulic engineering. In a region with wet and dry seasons, controlling water was power. This reservoir didn't just hold water. It was part of a complex system of canals and dams that terraformed the landscape. To your right, the city center rises up. We aren't talking about huts. We are talking about pyramids, temples reaching 90 feet into the air, painted in bright red and blue stucco. At the heart of the city is an enclosed plaza, bustling with noise. Picture a market day, traders selling jaguar pelts, jade beads, colorful macaw feathers, and mountains of maize. But the most shocking discovery at Valeriana was a structure that looked like an amphitheater. It's a massive, semicircular stone construction. We've never seen anything quite like this in the Maya world before. Was it for speeches, for plays, or perhaps for a spectator sport even more intense than the famous ball game? Speaking of the ball game, they found 2 courts. This was the sacred sport of Mesoamerica, a mix of soccer and basketball, where players used their hips to keep a heavy rubber ball in motion. It wasn't just a game, it was a ritual reenactment of the cosmos, often ending in sacrifice. The fact that Valeriana had 2 courts suggests it was a major league capital, a place where the best athletes and the most powerful lords gathered. What makes Valeriana truly mind-blowing is where it was found. It wasn't in the deep, untouched heart of the Biosphere Reserve. It was found in an area that is currently inhabited. Modern highways cut right through it. People have been driving over ancient pyramids for decades, thinking they were just natural hills. This discovery fundamentally changes our understanding of the Maya civilization. For a long time, the popular image of the Maya was of isolated city-states separated by vast, empty jungles. Valeriana proves that the Maya lowlands were actually a crowded, interconnected landscape. It was more like the suburban sprawl of Los Angeles or the density of modern Belgium. Every hill you see in this region might be a temple. Every dip in the ground might be an ancient canal. The collapse of this city around the year 900 AD is still a mystery. Did the climate change? Did the water run out? Or did warfare tear it apart? The LIDAR images show defensive walls, palisades, hastily constructed around the central precinct in the later years. This suggests the end of Valeriana was violent and fearful. But for now, in 2025, Valeriana stands as a testament to human ingenuity. It reminds us that civilization isn't a modern invention. Over 1,000 years ago, without metal tools, without the wheel, and without beasts of burden, these people built a metropolis that commanded the landscape. And the scary part? The archaeologists estimate that we have only mapped a fraction of the Maya world. There are likely dozens more Valerianas out there, sleeping under the roots of the jungle, waiting for the next laser pulse to wake them up. From the humid jungles of the Americas, we are going to shift gears completely. We are going back in time even further. Not thousands of years, but 11,000 years. We are heading to the cradle of civilization in Turkey, where a discovery has just challenged everything we thought we knew about Stone Age people. From the jungles of the New World, we are going to jump back across the ocean and back in time, way back. We are landing in the rocky, arid hills of southeastern Turkey. This is the region of Anatolia, often called the 0 point of human history. You might have heard of Göbekli Tepe, the famous first temple that changed history books a decade ago. But in 2025, its younger, cooler brother stole the spotlight. Welcome to Discovery Number 3, the Stone Age Theater of Karahan Tepe. Let's set the scene. We are talking about 11,000 years ago. This is the pre-pottery Neolithic. To put that in perspective, this is 6,000 years before the pyramids of Egypt. It's 6,000 years before Stonehenge. For the longest time, the standard scientific model was simple. Humans were hunter-gatherers. We were nomads. We spent all our energy chasing gazelles and picking berries. We didn't have time for art, architecture, or parties. We were too busy trying not to starve. Karahantepe looked at that theory and laughed. In the excavations of 2025, archaeologists uncovered a massive structure carved directly into the living bedrock. It wasn't a house. It wasn't a grain silo. It was a public space. Imagine a sunken room, about 75 feet across. To enter it, you have to walk down a set of stairs carved into the stone. As you descend, the modern world disappears, and you are surrounded by the artwork of the Ice Age. The walls aren't flat, they are alive. The 2025 dig revealed a stunning panel of high-relief carvings. We aren't talking about stick figures scratched into a wall. We are talking about 3D sculptures that pop out at you. There is a carving of a man, his face expressive and terrified. Why is he terrified? Because leaping onto his back is a leopard. The cat's teeth are bared, its claws digging into the man's shoulders. The dynamism, the movement, the sheer artistic talent required to carve this out of hard limestone using only flint tools is mind-boggling. But the centerpiece of this room is what experts are calling the seated man. It's a statue found in the center of the enclosure. He is sitting down, holding his phallus, a symbol of life and potency. But his face looks calm, almost meditative. He is staring at the entrance, watching everyone who comes in. What makes this discovery truly best of 2025 material is the layout. The room has stone benches running along the walls. It has acoustics. When you stand in the center and speak, your voice amplifies. This implies something revolutionary: performance. These people weren't just surviving, they were socializing. They were gathering together in a constructed space to watch something. Maybe it was a ritual reenactment of a hunt. Maybe it was a coming-of-age ceremony where young men had to face the leopard. Or maybe, just maybe, it was storytelling. Think about that. 11,000 years ago, under the starlight of the Neolithic sky, hundreds of people sat on these benches. They watched a performance. They felt fear, awe, and connection. This discovery destroys the idea of the primitive caveman. These people had a complex society. They had architects who could plan a sunken building. They had artists who were supported by the community so they didn't have to hunt. And most importantly, they had a need for shared public experiences. Karahantepe tells us that before we built cities to live in, we built theaters to dream in. We didn't settle down just to farm wheat. We settled down to be together. The community came first. The agriculture came second. The site is still being excavated, but the leopard and the man carving has already become the iconic image of 2025 archaeology, a frozen moment of struggle and beauty that bridges the gap between us and our oldest ancestors. For our next stop, we are fast-forwarding to a time that feels a bit more familiar: the Iron Age. We are going to the Holy Land. We are standing in Jerusalem. Now, Jerusalem is an archaeologist's nightmare and dream combined. It has been destroyed, rebuilt, destroyed, and rebuilt so many times that the ground beneath the streets is like a chaotic layer cake of history. Finding something specific here is like finding a needle in a haystack, while the haystack is on fire. But this year, in the shadow of the ancient walls, a team sifting through debris from the Ophel area found a small piece of clay that packs a massive punch. Discovery number 4, the Assyrian tax letter. To understand the weight of this little clay tablet, you have to understand the geopolitics of the year 701 BC. Imagine the Assyrian Empire as the Death Star of the ancient world. They were the superpower. They were brutal, efficient, and their war machine was unstoppable. When the Assyrian army showed up at your city gates, you didn't fight. You surrendered, or you were erased. The Bible tells the famous story of King Hezekiah of Judah. The Assyrian king, Sennacherib, had already destroyed the northern kingdom of Israel. He was marching on Jerusalem. Hezekiah was trapped. The biblical text in the book of Kings says Hezekiah stripped the gold from the temple doors, and sent it to Sennacherib to try and buy him off. For centuries, this was just a story in a religious text. Critics said, "Did it really happen like that? Or is this just later propaganda?" Enter the 2025 discovery. The object found is a clay bulla, a seal impression, and a fragment of a tablet written in cuneiform, the script of the Assyrians, not the Hebrews. This is crucial. It wasn't written by the locals, it was written by the invaders. It is essentially a receipt, or more accurately, a demand note. The translation, released just months ago, sent shivers down the spines of historians. It lists a specific weight of silver and gold required to stay the hand of the great king. It mentions Hezekiah the Judahite by name. This is the invoice for the survival of Jerusalem. When you look at this jagged piece of clay, you aren't seeing a dry administrative record. You are seeing panic. You are seeing the moment a king realized he couldn't win by force. The horizontal story here is incredible. Imagine the scene. The Assyrian army is camped outside the walls, thousands of soldiers, chariots, and battering rams. The smoke of burning towns nearby fills the air. Inside the palace, Hezekiah's scribes are frantic. An Assyrian messenger rides up to the gate, not with a sword, but with this tablet. Pay this amount or die. The discovery was made using a technique called wet sifting. This is a process where archaeologists take buckets of dirt that have already been dug up, put them on a mesh screen, and spray them with water. The water washes away the dust, and suddenly, small objects that look like dirt clods reveal themselves to be seals, coins, or tablets. This tiny tablet was almost missed. It was almost thrown on a dump pile. But because someone took the time to wash that specific bucket of dirt, we now have physical proof of one of the most dramatic standoffs in biblical history. It validates the timeline. It confirms that the Assyrian administrative machine was right there, inside or at the gates of Jerusalem. It humanizes the biblical figures. Hezekiah wasn't just a character in a sermon, he was a politician dealing with a mafia-style shakedown on a national scale. And for us in 2025, it's strangely relatable. We understand taxes. We understand debt. We understand the fear of a looming power we can't control. This tablet is the ancient equivalent of a final notice letter from the bank, except the penalty for non-payment wasn't a bad credit score, it was the annihilation of your people. Holding this tablet is holding the tension of the year 701 BC. It's a small, ugly piece of dried mud. But it tells a story of survival against all odds. From the tense political standoffs of Jerusalem, we are moving west to the coast of Italy. We are visiting a city that needs no introduction, yet somehow manages to surprise us every single year. We are in Pompeii. Now, you might think, Pompeii? Again? We've dug up the brothels, the snack bars, the villas. What could possibly be left that qualifies as a Best of 2025 discovery? Well, this year, archaeologists excavating in the Central District, Regio 9, brushed away the volcanic ash and found something that made them stop and stare. They didn't find just another room. They found the Blue Room. In the Roman world, colors meant everything. Red and ochre were common. You see them everywhere in Pompeii. But blue? Blue was expensive. Blue was rare. To paint an entire room in blue meant you weren't just rich. You were showing off on a level that would make modern billionaires blush. This discovery is officially known as a sacrarium, a shrine room devoted to ritual and dining. But let's call it what it really was: the ultimate VIP lounge. Imagine stepping into this space. The walls are painted a deep electric azure, a color derived from Egyptian blue, a synthetic pigment that was difficult to manufacture and imported at great cost. It's like walking inside a sapphire. But the walls aren't just blue, they are populated. Floating against this cerulean background are painted figures of women. These are the Maenads, the female followers of Dionysus, the god of wine and ecstasy. They are depicted in flowing robes, dancing, playing instruments, lost in a divine trance. This room wasn't for sleeping, it was for partying. But not a frat party, a high-end, spiritual, wine-fueled banquet. The horizontal story here is fascinating because it gives us a glimpse into the psychological state of the Roman elite right before the end. The room is designed to transport you. When you are inside, surrounded by that blue, you aren't in a busy, dusty Roman city anymore. You are in a mythical realm. You are in the sky or the sea. The archaeologists also found piles of oyster shells near the doorway. This detail is pure gold. It tells us exactly what was on the menu. Oysters were a luxury import, likely brought fresh from the coast. So construct the scene with me. It's 79 AD, maybe a week before the eruption of Vesuvius. It's night. The oil lamps are flickering, casting dancing shadows on the blue walls, making the painted Maenads look like they are actually moving. The room is filled with the smell of roasted meat, the brine of fresh oysters, and the heavy aroma of spiced wine. The owner of this house is hosting a dinner. He is proud. He gestures to the walls, showing his guests that he can afford to surround them in the color of the gods. They are laughing, eating, completely unaware that the mountain looming over their garden is waking up. The preservation is mind-blowing. That's the only word for it. Because the room was buried so quickly by the pyroclastic flow, the paint didn't have time to fade in the sun. When the team revealed it in 2025, the blue was as vibrant as the day it was painted. It's a time capsule in the truest sense. But there's a scientific layer here, too. The ash didn't just hide the room, it sealed it in a vacuum. The chemical analysis of the pigments is teaching us new things about Roman trade networks. To get that specific shade of blue, they needed ingredients that likely came from as far away as Afghanistan or processed in the factories of Alexandria. This one room connects Pompeii to the global economy of the ancient world. The Blue Room stands as a haunting monument to the fragility of life. It represents the height of human culture, art, and indulgence, all frozen in the exact moment before catastrophe. It reminds us that history doesn't happen in black and white. It happened in vibrant, expensive, dazzling color. We are leaving the blue walls of Pompeii and crossing the Atlantic once more. We are heading to the humid, green heart of Central America. But this time, we aren't going to Mexico. We are going to Belize, to the ancient city of Caracol. Caracol has always been the sleeping giant of Maya archaeology. It's massive, covering an area larger than modern-day Belize City, but it often gets less attention than Tikal or Chichen Itza. That changed in 2025. Deep within the structural core of the city, archaeologists weren't using lasers this time. They were doing it the old-fashioned way. Tunneling. They were investigating a temple structure that had been built over and expanded centuries later. A common Maya practice, like Russian nesting dolls of architecture. And deep inside the earliest layer, they found him. Discovery number 6 is the tomb of the founder, believed to be the resting place of King Te Kabchak, tree branch, rain god, or a ruler from that very first dynasty. Now, finding a Maya tomb is always exciting, but the condition and the contents of this one were spectacular. Let's talk about the atmosphere first. The Maya believed that caves and tombs were portals to Xibalba, the underworld. It was a watery, dark place. When the archaeologists broke the seal, they were met with a damp, cool draft. Lying on a stone bench was the skeleton of a powerful man. But you wouldn't look at the bones first. You would look at the face. Covering his skull was a mosaic jade mask. In the Maya world, jade was not just a pretty stone. It was everything. It was more valuable than gold. Why? Because it was green. It represented water, maize, and life itself. To the Maya, jade was the breath of the soul. By covering the king's face with jade, they were giving him an eternal face, one that would never rot, one that identified him as a god in the afterlife. The craftsmanship of the mask found in 2025 is exquisite. It's made of hundreds of small polished tesserae, tiles, of apple green jade, fitting together perfectly to form a human visage. The eyes are made of obsidian and shell, giving it a terrifyingly lifelike stare. But let's go horizontal. What does this tell us about the people? The analysis of the bones revealed something interesting. The king had a diet rich in protein, much richer than the common people. But his bones also showed signs of arthritis. This wasn't a god who floated on clouds. This was a man who lived, walked, and felt pain. Surrounding him were ceramic vessels painted with the Holmul dancer style, figures dancing with elaborate back racks. These pots were filled with offerings. And thanks to residue analysis, science talk for scraping the bottom of the jar, we know what was in them. Chocolate. Frothy, spicy, chili-infused chocolate. The drink of nobility. Imagine the funeral ceremony 1,500 years ago. The entire city of Karakol is silent. The air is thick with the smoke of copal incense, a heavy, resinous smell that still lingers in churches in the region today. The body of the king, wrapped in fine cotton and jaguar skins, is carried up the temple steps. The priests, wearing terrifying masks of their own, chant the prayers to open the road to Xibalba. They lower him into the dark chamber. They place the jade mask over his face, ensuring his transformation is complete. They pour the chocolate into the jars for his journey. And then they seal the door. They believed he would become an ancestor, watching over the city, bringing the rains. For centuries, he lay there while the city above him grew, fought wars with Tikal, flourished, and eventually collapsed. The jungle took over. The roots of massive mahogany trees wrapped around the stones. Finding him in 2025 connects the modern people of Belize directly to their heritage. It's a reminder that Karakol wasn't just a collection of stone buildings. It was a political powerhouse built by specific individuals with names, families, and legacies. The Jade King has returned, staring out at us with those obsidian eyes, challenging us to understand a civilization that thrived in the jungle long before we arrived. We are leaving the jungles of Belize and setting sail for the wine-dark sea of the Mediterranean. We are heading to a small, rugged island in the Ionian Sea, an island that has held a mythical status in Western literature for nearly 3,000 years. We are going to Ithaca. For centuries, scholars, dreamers, and treasure hunters have asked the same question. Was he real? Was Odysseus, the man of many wiles, the hero who tricked the Trojans with a wooden horse, The king who spent 10 years fighting monsters and gods to get back to his wife Penelope, actually a flesh-and-blood human being? Or was he just a figment of Homer's imagination? In 2025, archaeologists working near the village of Stavros, at a site locally known as the School of Homer, found something that might finally answer that question. Discovery number 7. The votive shard of Odysseus. The dig site itself is stunning. It sits high on a ridge, overlooking bays on both sides of the island. You can smell the wild thyme and the salt air. It's the kind of place a king would choose for a palace. The team was excavating the ruins of a Mycenaean-era building. That's the late Bronze Age, the exact time period of the Trojan War. Buried in the destruction layer, they found a fragment of a terracotta roof tile. It wasn't impressive to look at initially, just a curved piece of baked clay. But when they cleaned the dirt off, they saw scratching on the surface. Graffiti. Someone, roughly 2,800 years ago, had scratched a prayer onto this tile. The inscription, written in an archaic form of Greek, read, "A prayer to Odysseus here gives," followed by a fragmented name. This is the archaeological equivalent of finding a "Batman was here" sticker in a cave in Gotham. Why is this mind-blowing? Because it proves that people in ancient Ithaca, just a few centuries after the alleged war, believed Odysseus was real. They weren't just telling stories about him around the campfire. They were worshipping him. They were visiting this specific building, which they believed was his palace, to ask for his help. Let's go horizontal. Imagine the person who scratched that tile. Maybe he was a sailor, about to embark on a dangerous voyage to Italy. He climbs up this hill to the ruins of the old palace. He's scared of the storms, scared of pirates. He picks up a broken tile and scratches a prayer to the ultimate survivor, the man who beat the Cyclops, the man who survived the wrath of Poseidon. Help me survive the sea, just like you did. This discovery blurs the line between myth and history. It suggests that behind the monsters and the magic of the Odyssey, there was a real king, a real man whose memory was so powerful that it became a religion. We often think of myths as fake. But in Ithaca, Odysseus was as real as the rocks and the olive trees. This shard connects us to the moment when a man became a legend. It's a physical anchor for one of the greatest stories ever told. If Odysseus was real, then the war he fought in must have been real too. So for our next discovery, we are crossing the Aegean Sea to the northwest coast of Turkey. We are going to Hisarlik. You know it by its other name, Troy. Discovery number 8 is a brutal reality check. It's not a golden mask or a statue of Helen. It's something much uglier and much more terrifying. In the layer of the city known as Troy 7A, the layer that most historians agree corresponds to the legendary Trojan War, archaeologists found a massive cache of weaponry. But it wasn't swords or spears. They found a slingstone arsenal. We're talking about thousands of rounded, egg-shaped stones piled in heaps behind the defensive walls, ready to be used. Now, Hollywood has ruined our understanding of ancient warfare. We picture Brad Pitt as Achilles, fighting a graceful sword duel. We picture honor. We picture glory. This discovery tells a different story. It tells the story of a desperate, gritty, violent siege. Let's talk about the sling. In the modern world, we think of a slingshot as a kid's toy. In the Bronze Age, a sling was a lethal weapon. A skilled slinger could launch a stone at speeds of over 100 miles per hour. These weren't pebbles. They were heavy projectiles that hit with the force of a .44 Magnum bullet. If one of these hit you in the head, you didn't get a headache. You died instantly. If it hit your body, it shattered ribs and collapsed lungs. Finding this arsenal piles up a horrific image of the final days of Troy. The horizontal story here is the sound. Close your eyes and imagine the siege. It's not just the clanging of bronze swords, it's the terrifying whizzing sound of thousands of rocks cutting through the air like invisible hornets. It's the sound of stones cracking against shields, against the mud brick walls, and against bone. The fact that these stones were found piled up means they never got to use them all. The enemy got in too fast. This discovery strips away the romance of the Iliad. Homer sings about the gods interfering in the battle, but the archaeology shows us the human panic. We see the logistics of war. Someone had to go to the riverbeds, select thousands of perfect stones, carry them up the hill, and stockpile them at strategic points along the wall. This took months of preparation. The Trojans knew the end was coming. They were preparing for the fight of their lives. When you hold one of these stones, cold, heavy, smooth, you aren't holding a piece of poetry. You are holding a piece of ammunition that failed to save a city. You are touching the fear of the people inside those walls. The Arsenal of Troy discovery of 2025 grounds the legend in the dirt and blood of reality. It reminds us that before Troy was a story, it was a city of mothers, fathers, and children huddled behind a wall, hoping these piles of rocks would keep the monsters out. From the ancient battlefields of Troy, we are jumping forward in time and flying northwest to a place that is very much alive today. We are going to London. Usually, when we think of archaeology in the UK, we think of Stonehenge standing in a green field. But discovery number 9 didn't happen in the countryside. It happened right in the belly of the beast, beneath the concrete and steel of the city of London. Imagine the scene. It's 2025. Above ground, bankers are rushing to meetings, red double-decker buses are gridlocked, and the glass skyscrapers like the Shard are piercing the gray clouds. But 20 feet below the pavement, in the wet, dark clay of a construction site for a new office block, archaeologists hit a wall. Literally. They hit a wall so thick and so well built that the modern excavators clanged against it. They had found the lost basilica of Londinium. Now, pause for a second. When we hear basilica today, we usually think of a big church like St. Peter's in Rome. But in the Roman world, a basilica wasn't religious. It was the town hall. It was the mall. It was the Wall Street Stock Exchange and the Supreme Court all rolled into one massive building. We knew Roman London had one, but we thought it had been destroyed or lost to history. The 2025 excavation revealed that not only is it there, but it is enormous. The footprint of this building is bigger than the modern St. Paul's Cathedral. Let's go horizontal and reconstruct the vibe of this place around the year 100 AD. If you could take an elevator from the modern sidewalk down to the Roman level, the first thing you would notice is that the noise hasn't changed. London was always loud. Inside the basilica, it would be deafening. You would hear the shouting of lawyers arguing cases in one corner. In another, merchants from Gaul, France, and Spain are haggling over the price of wine and wool. You'd smell unwashed bodies, expensive perfume, street food frying in oil, and the sharp scent of ink and parchment. This was the engine room of the province. The dig team found something that brings this bureaucracy to life in a hilarious way. They found a stylus, a Roman pen, and a wooden writing tablet preserved in the wet mud. The wax had melted away centuries ago, but the writer had pressed so hard that the scratches were still visible on the wood. It was a practice alphabetic sheet. Someone, maybe a bored clerk or a student, had just written the alphabet over and over again, and then scribbled a rude caricature of a man with a big nose. It's perfect. Amidst the grandeur of the Roman Empire, amidst the marble columns and the statues of the emperor, there was a guy who was just bored at work, doodling to pass the time. This discovery is crucial because it reminds us that London isn't a modern invention. It has been a global financial hub for 2,000 years. The Romans chose this spot on the Thames for the exact same reason the banks are there today: trade, connection, and money. Walking through the muddy trenches of the 2025 dig, seeing the layers of burning from the revolt of Boudica, then the rebuilding, then the medieval rubbish pits, and finally the modern foundations, you realize that London is just a layer cake of human ambition. And right at the bottom, the Romans laid a foundation so strong that we are quite literally still building on top of it. We are leaving the gray skies of London and heading back to the sun-drenched coast of Turkey. But this time, we aren't stopping at the beach. We are going deep. Discovery number 10 is a time capsule in the truest sense of the word. It is a Roman shipwreck found off the coast of Antalya. Now, shipwrecks are found all the time. Usually, they are piles of broken wood and scattered pots, smashed by storms or crushed by the weight of the ocean. But the Antalya shipwreck of 2025 is different. It's a ghost ship. It sits at a depth of about 50 meters, 160 feet. Because of the unique currents and the lack of oxygen at that specific depth, the ship didn't rot. It didn't fall apart. It sits upright on the sandy bottom, looking almost exactly like it did the moment it sank 1,800 years ago. When the ROV, remotely operated vehicle, shined its lights on the wreck, the operators back on the surface gasped. The mast was down, but the hull was intact. And the cargo? The cargo was perfectly stacked. Hundreds of amphorae, those two-handled clay jars, were lined up in the hold, still sealed with their original pine resin stoppers. This is where the story gets delicious. Literally. We didn't just find the jars. We know what is inside them. Initial scans and a carefully retrieved sample reveal that this ship was carrying a fortune in garum. Garum was the ketchup of the Roman world. It was a fermented fish sauce that they put on everything. It was pungent, salty, and savory. Umami. To find a ship full of it is like finding a sunken FedEx truck full of caviar. Let's go horizontal and imagine the final voyage. It's roughly 200 AD. The ship, let's call her the Fortuna, departs from a port in North Africa or Spain. The captain is trying to make a run to the rich markets of Asia Minor. The preservation is so good that archaeologists found the cooking pot used by the crew still sitting near the stern. They found a small personal stash of cherry stones. Someone on that boat was snacking on cherries, spitting the pits onto the deck, watching the coastline go by. Why did it sink? That's the mystery. There is no sign of battle damage, no massive hole from a reef. The ship just went down. Perhaps a sudden squall swamped them. Perhaps the cargo shifted. Or perhaps, as one theory suggests, the crew fell ill. The ship, unguided, drifted until it took on water and slowly glided to the bottom. For 1,800 years, It sat there in the silent blue twilight. Fish swam through the rigging. The wood turned gray. But the cherries, the fish sauce, and the personal lives of those sailors stayed locked inside. This discovery is a Best of 2025 winner because it allows us to study the economics of the ancient world in high definition. We can analyze the DNA of the fish in the sauce to see exactly what species were being caught. We can analyze the wood of the ship to see where trees were being harvested. But more than the data, it's the stillness of the image that haunts us. A perfect ship, sailing forever on the bottom of the sea, carrying a cargo that no one will ever taste, to a port it will never reach. It is a perfectly preserved tragedy. From the silent depths of the Mediterranean, we are embarking on a long voyage south, across the equator, to the island of Madagascar. This is a land of lemurs, baobab trees, and unique evolution. But deep in the rugged Isalo Massif, miles away from the coast, a discovery was made in 2025 that feels like an episode of The X-Files. Welcome to Discovery number 11, The Enigma of Teneke. Teneke is weird. There is no other word for it. Archaeologists have known about some ruins here for a while, but they assumed it was a small, temporary settlement. But in 2025, a comprehensive survey using drones and high-resolution scanning revealed the full extent of the site, and it is baffling. This isn't a village of mud huts. This is a complex of stone architecture that looks like absolutely nothing else in Madagascar. In fact, it doesn't look like anything else in sub-Saharan Africa. The structures are carved into rock niches. There are massive stone walls cut with geometric precision. But the weirdest part? The V-shaped cuts in the rock faces and the specific style of the stone benches. When architects looked at the scans, they scratched their heads. Then, someone pulled out a book on ancient Persia, modern-day Iran. The architecture at Teneke bears a striking, almost impossible resemblance to Zoroastrian towers of silence and rock-cut structures found thousands of miles away in the Middle East. Let's go horizontal. Imagine the year is roughly 1000 AD. We are in the middle of nowhere in Madagascar. It's hot, dry, and rocky. Suddenly, you stumble upon a community of people who look different, speak a strange language, and are obsessively carving the cliffs into geometric shapes. Who were they? The leading theory, exploding in 2025, is that this was a colony of refugees, perhaps Persians or people from the wider Indian Ocean trade network, who were shipwrecked or fled persecution. They didn't settle on the coast where the traders were. They marched inland into the most defensible, rugged terrain they could find, and tried to rebuild their home from memory. It's a story of isolation. Imagine being the last of your kind, thousands of miles from home, carving stone in a desperate attempt to maintain your culture, your religion, and your sanity. The excavations found no typical Malagasy pottery, no local tools. It's like a foreign spaceship landed in the canyon and turned into stone. The mystery of Teneke challenges our understanding of ancient migration. We used to think of the ocean as a barrier. This discovery suggests the Indian Ocean was a superhighway, but one with many off-ramps leading to dead ends. Teneke is a ghost town of a lost tribe that history forgot to write down. Standing there, amidst the silent geometric stones, you feel the intense loneliness of the people who built it. They were hiding, and they did such a good job that it took us 1,000 years to find them. We are leaving the mysteries of Madagascar and heading back north to the Balkans. We are landing in Bulgaria. This is the land of the Thracians. If you've seen the movie Spartacus, you know a Thracian. They were famous in the ancient world for three things: their gold, their wine, and their terrifying skill in battle. In 2025, in a cornfield near the village of Kapitan Petko Voivoda, a tractor hit a stone. That stone turned out to be the roof of a tomb. Discovery number 12, the warrior and his horse. Now, Thracian tombs are famous for gold, but this one is special because of the story it tells about a bond between a man and an animal. Inside the tomb, archaeologists found the skeleton of a warrior. He was tall, robust, and clearly a nobleman. He was decked out. He wore a gold pectoral, chest plate, a heavy gold ring, and was surrounded by weapons, curved knives and spearheads. But right next to him, in the same burial chamber, was the skeleton of his horse. This wasn't a symbolic horse bone. The entire animal was sacrificed and laid to rest beside its master. And here is the kicker. The horse was buried with its own jewelry. The bridle was decorated with silver appliques depicting mythical beasts. Let's go horizontal and visualize the funeral. It's around 300 BC. The warrior has fallen in battle. The tribe gathers. The mood is somber but loud. The Thracians believed death was a beginning, a celebration of immortality. The warrior is laid in the stone chamber. Then, his warhorse is led in. This isn't just livestock. This is his partner. They have charged into shield walls together. They have hunted together. In the Thracian belief system, a warrior cannot ride into the afterlife on foot. He needs his mount. The horse is dispatched, hopefully quickly, and laid lovingly next to him. The silver ornaments on the bridle catch the light of the torches one last time before the stone slabs are slid into place. This discovery is powerful because it bridges the gap between artifact and emotion. We can analyze the gold and the silver, and they are beautiful museum pieces. But the arrangement of the bones, the man and the horse, side by side for eternity, speaks to a universal human sentiment. We love our companions, whether it's a dog in a modern backyard or a war horse in a Thracian tomb. The desire to be with our loyal friends even after death is something that hasn't changed in 2,300 years. The excavation also revealed glass vessels, likely imported from Greece, showing that this warrior was a man of taste. He lived in a connected cosmopolitan world, but he died with the fierce tribal values of his ancestors. The warrior and the horse is a snapshot of loyalty frozen in time. From the golden treasures of Bulgaria, we are heading to the absolute edge of the map. We are going south, past Australia, past New Zealand, all the way down to the freezing, storm-battered waters of the Southern Ocean. We are landing on Enderby Island, part of the Auckland Islands group. This is the doorstep of Antarctica. Discovery number 13 is a story of impossible courage. It's the confirmation that Polynesian explorers, the ancestors of the Maori and Hawaiians, didn't just conquer the tropical Pacific, they conquered the ice. For years, there were oral legends. The Maori tell stories of a navigator named Uite Rangiora, who sailed south into a place of frozen rocks and seas that looked like arrowroot. Historians dismissed this as a fable. They said, "No way, you can't sail an open canoe into Antarctic waters. You'd freeze to death." Well, in 2025, the Archaeology struck back. A team digging into the sand dunes of Enderby Island found a settlement layer. They found ovens. earth ovens known as hangi. They found stone tools made of basalt that can be chemically traced back to quarries in Tahiti and New Zealand. And most importantly, they found the bones of seals and sea lions that had been butchered with those tools. The carbon dating puts them there around the year 1250 AD. Let's go horizontal. I want you to really picture this because it is terrifying. Imagine you are a Polynesian navigator. You are used to turquoise lagoons, coconut palms, and warm trade winds. You set out on a double-hulled canoe, guided only by the stars and the swell of the ocean. You sail south. The air gets colder. The water turns from blue to a menacing gray. The waves become mountains. You have no GPS. You have no Gore-Tex jackets. You are wearing woven plant fibers and dogskin cloaks. And yet, you keep going. The discovery at Enderby Island shows that they didn't just touch land and leave. They stayed. They hunted. The layout of the site suggests a temporary wintering camp. They pulled their waka, canoes, up onto the freezing beach, flipped them over for shelter, and survived the sub-Antarctic winter. Why does this matter? Because it rewrites the history of human exploration. We often celebrate the European Age of Discovery, Cook, Magellan, Columbus. But centuries before them, Polynesian navigators were operating on a level of skill that is almost incomprehensible to us. They treated the Pacific Ocean not as a barrier, but as a highway. The artifacts found in 2025 included a small carved pendant shaped like a whale. It's a personal item. It speaks to the spiritual connection they had with the ocean. Even in this hostile, frozen hellscape, they found beauty. They brought their culture with them. This discovery is the Moana movie sequel that Disney is too scared to make. It's Moana on ice. It proves that the human drive to see what is over the horizon is stronger than the fear of death. These ancient sailors looked at the bottom of the world, saw the ice shelf, and instead of turning back, they landed and made dinner. We are thawing out from the Antarctic winds and heading back to the equator, but this time to the South American continent. We are going to Ecuador. For centuries, Western science had a bias about the Amazon rainforest. The thinking went like this. The jungle soil is too poor to support big cities. The environment is too hostile. Therefore, the Amazon tribes must have always been small, primitive hunter-gatherer groups. Discovery number 14. Takes that bias, crumples it up, and throws it in the trash. Welcome to the Upano Valley. In 2025, the results of a massive LiDAR survey, there's that laser technology again, were published, revealing an ancient urban landscape that is mind-boggling in scale. We aren't talking about a few villages. We are talking about a dense network of settlements that stretches for miles. This is the Green Metropolis. The images reveal over 6,000 earthen mounds. These were the platforms for houses and ceremonial buildings. But the real shocker is the connectivity. The cities are connected by a complex grid of roads. And these aren't winding little deer trails. These are straight, wide, engineered highways. Some of them are 30 feet wide and stretch for 10 to 15 miles. Let's go horizontal and drop into this world around 500 BC. That's right. This was happening while the Roman Republic was just getting started. If you stood on one of these mounds, you wouldn't see a pristine wilderness. You would see a managed landscape. You would see fields of corn, manioc, and sweet potato. You would see fruit orchards. The soundscape would be incredible. Instead of the silence of the jungle, You would hear the noise of thousands of people. Dogs barking, children playing, the rhythmic thumping of women grinding corn, the sound of wooden drums signaling between settlements. The archaeologists found evidence of chicha breweries. Chicha is a fermented corn beer. This means these people were throwing massive parties. The road system suggests that people from different suburbs would travel to the central plazas for festivals, trade, and political gatherings. Why is this discovery on the Best of 2025 list? Because it proves that the Amazon was once a garden. The people of the Upano Valley didn't fight nature. They engineered it. They built drainage canals to manage the rain. They built up the earth to keep their homes dry. They created a civilization that lived with the forest, not against it. The tragedy is that this civilization vanished, likely due to European diseases spreading ahead of the explorers, or perhaps volcanic activity from the nearby Andes. The jungle grew back. The wooden houses rotted away. The earthen mounds were covered in trees. For 2,000 years, they were invisible. But now, thanks to technology, we can see the ghosts of the grid. It forces us to ask a humbling question. What will our cities look like in 2,000 years? Will New York or Tokyo just be strange mounds covered in vines? The Upano Valley reminds us that civilization is fragile, but the footprint we leave on the earth is deep. From the lost cities of the Amazon, we are flying back across the Atlantic to the misty, green fields of Suffolk, England. We are returning to one of the most famous archaeological sites on the planet, Sutton Hoo. Now, when you hear Sutton Hoo, you probably picture that iconic iron helmet with the mustache. It's the face of the Anglo-Saxon world. But in 2025, the headlines weren't about a sword or a shield. They were about a bucket. Yes, you heard me right. Discovery number 15 is the Bromswell bucket. Now, before you skip this part thinking, who cares about a pail? Let me stop you. This isn't a bucket for milking cows. This is a bucket that rewrites the history of the so-called Dark Ages. For a long time, historians looked at early medieval England around 600 AD and saw a collapsed society. The Roman Empire was gone. The lights had gone out. People were supposedly living in mud huts, completely cut off from the rest of the world, fighting over scraps. The Bromswell bucket, analyzed in 2025 using advanced metallurgy, says, Objection. This object, found in a newly discovered warrior grave just a mile from the main ship burial, is a masterpiece. It's made of copper alloy, decorated with hunting scenes that look nothing like Saxon art. The metal analysis traced the copper not to Wales or Cornwall, but to Turkey. Specifically, the mines of the Byzantine Empire. Let's go horizontal and imagine the journey of this object. This is the ultimate road trip story. It starts in a hot, noisy workshop in Antioch or Constantinople. A master craftsman hammers out the sides, engraving lions and biblical figures. He thinks he is making a gift for a local bishop. But then, the bucket gets moving. Maybe it's bought by a Syrian merchant. It travels on a ship across the Mediterranean, dodging pirates. It lands in Marseille. It gets traded up the rivers of France, passed from hand to hand. Maybe it was a bribe? Maybe it was a diplomatic gift from a Byzantine emperor trying to make friends with the barbarians in the north? Finally, it ends up in the hands of an Anglo-Saxon warlord in cold, rainy East Anglia. Imagine the scene in the mead hall. The fire is roaring. The warlord is feasting. He points to this bucket, shining, exotic, covered in strange foreign images. He uses it to mix wine and water. It's his status symbol. It tells his guests, "I am not just a local thug. I am connected to the world." The discovery of this bucket proves that the Dark Ages weren't dark at all. They were global. Even in the mud of Suffolk, people were touching objects made in the warm sun of the Mediterranean. It shows that trade, art, and ideas were flowing across thousands of miles, linking the fragmented tribes of Europe to the superpowers of the East. It's just a bucket, but it holds the story of a world that refused to stay broken. We are following that Mediterranean connection all the way back to its source. We are heading to Egypt, but not to the desert tombs this time. We are going to the coast. We are going to Alexandria. Discovery number 16 is wet, luxurious, and undeniably sexy. Underwater archaeologists diving in the murky waters of the eastern harbor, the royal quarters of ancient Alexandria, found the remains of a vessel. But this wasn't a warship. It didn't have a ram. It wasn't built for speed. It was wide. It was flat. And it was paved with tiles. They found the Queen's Pleasure Barge. We have always read about the legendary wealth of the Ptolemies, the Greek dynasty that ruled Egypt, ending with Cleopatra. We read stories of Cleopatra meeting Mark Antony on a barge with sails of purple and oars of silver, where the smell of incense was so strong it wafted to the shore. Historians often dismissed this as Roman propaganda, thinking they were just exaggerating to make her look like a decadent temptress. The 2025 discovery suggests the propaganda was actually an understatement. The wreckage reveals a floating palace. The team found fragments of mosaic flooring inside the hull. Think about the engineering required to put a heavy stone floor on a wooden boat. They found evidence of a plumbing system, lead pipes that likely supplied fountains or even a heated bath on deck. Let's go horizontal. Close your eyes and step aboard. It's a warm Egyptian night, around 40 BC. The Nile is calm. The barge is drifting slowly, pushed by a gentle breeze. You aren't rocking on the waves. The boat is so massive and stable it feels like an island. The deck is lit by hundreds of oil lamps. There are silk canopies fluttering overhead. Servants are moving silently, pouring wine into cups made of alabaster. Musicians are playing flutes and lyres in the corner. This wasn't a vehicle for transportation. It was a vehicle for power. When Cleopatra invited generals like Caesar or Antony onto a boat like this, she wasn't just taking them for a ride. She was overwhelming their senses. She was showing them that Rome might have iron and steel, but Egypt had gold, culture, and pleasure. The excavation found broken pieces of ivory furniture inlays and, incredibly, a small gold hairpin with a pearl setting. A personal item lost during a party 2,000 years ago. Did it belong to a handmaiden? Or the queen herself? This discovery humanizes the legend. It takes the myth of Cleopatra and grounds it in physical reality. We see the props she used on her stage. We see that her power wasn't just magic or beauty, it was theater. She built a world of absolute luxury to seduce the most powerful men on earth. And this barge was her stage. Finding it in the dark water of the harbor is like finding the wreck of the Titanic. But instead of tragedy, it speaks of a time when life was a celebration of excess. We are leaving the luxury of Cleopatra's barge and crossing the Atlantic Ocean once again. But we aren't heading to the jungle this time. We are heading to the desert coast of Peru. Discovery number 17 is a place called Barranca. Now, when you think of Peru, you think of Machu Picchu. You think of the Incas. you think of stone walls high in the Andes clouds. But the Incas are actually the end of the story. To understand the beginning, you have to go down to the coast, to a landscape that looks more like Mars than a tropical paradise. In 2025, archaeologists working in the valleys north of Lima revealed the full extent of a monumental complex that is 3,500 years old. Let that number sink in. 3,500 years ago. This city was booming while the Israelites were supposedly wandering in the desert. It was thriving before Rome was even a glint in the eye of a wolf. For decades, we knew there were mounds here. But the 2025 excavation peeled back the sand and revealed the complexity of the monumental period. They found 4 massive ceremonial mounds, plazas, and sunken circular courts. Let's go horizontal. Imagine standing there in 1500 BC. You are surrounded by a landscape of beige and brown, the dry desert hills. But in the river valley, there is a ribbon of shocking green. This is where the cotton grows. The people here are fishermen and farmers. But they aren't living in simple huts. They are builders of the highest order. The discovery this year focused on the adobe architecture. These aren't just piles of mud. They are engineered bricks, plastered and painted. The walls were decorated with friezes of spiders and snakes, powerful deities in the Andean cosmology. But the real horizontal story is the economy of the ocean. Archaeologists found massive middens, trash piles, filled with anchovy bones and mollusk shells. Millions of them. This tells us a fascinating story about trade. The people on the coast caught the fish, they dried them. Then they hauled them inland to trade with the farmers for cotton and squash. This wasn't a barter between neighbors. This was an industrial-scale operation. The most human moment of the 2025 dig was the discovery of a votive cache buried under the floor of a temple. Inside, wrapped in decayed textile, was a small figurine made of unbaked clay. It depicts a woman holding a baby. It's crude compared to the gold of Egypt, but it's heartbreakingly intimate. The fingerprints of the maker are still visible in the clay. Why is this important? Because it destroys the old world bias. For centuries, historians thought civilization began in Mesopotamia and Egypt, and then slowly spread. Barranca proves that human genius is universal. The people of Peru were inventing complex society, building pyramids, and organizing labor forces completely independently. They didn't need aliens. They didn't need Europeans. They just needed organization, faith, and a lot of anchovies. Walking through the dusty ruins of Barranca today, with the Pacific wind whipping your hair, you realize you are standing at one of the cradles of humanity. It's a silent testament to the fact that wherever humans go, we build, we organize, and we reach for the sky. From the dry deserts of Peru, we are flying north and east to a land of mist, rain, and green hills. We are going to Scotland. Usually, when we think of Neolithic Britain, the Stone Age, we think of stone. Stonehenge, Skara Brae. We think of gray rocks standing in a field. But discovery number 18 reminds us that the Stone Age was actually the Wood Age. In 2025, on the Isle of Arran, a team discovered the charred remains of what they are calling a timber cathedral. We have found timber halls before, but nothing of this scale. This structure was over 100 feet long. It had rows of massive oak posts, each one weighing tons, supporting a roof that would have soared 30 feet into the air. This wasn't a house. It was too big to heat. It was a gathering place. Let's go horizontal and imagine the construction. It's 3,500 BC. There are no metal saws, no chainsaws. To build this hall, the community had to fell hundreds of ancient oak trees using only stone axes. Can you imagine the sound? Thwack, thwack, thwack. Day after day, the blisters, the sweat, the sheer calorie burn. Then, they had to drag these timbers miles to the site, peel the bark, and lift them into deep pits dug by hand with antler picks. The effort is staggering. It implies a level of social cohesion that rivals the construction of a medieval cathedral. But the most shocking part of the discovery, and the part that defines the horizontal experience, is how it ended. The archaeologists found that the hall didn't fall down from old age. It was burned down. Deliberately. And it wasn't an enemy raid. The fire was set from the inside, with accelerants. Imagine the night of the burning. The entire tribe is gathered. They have spent years building this magnificent structure. It is the pride of their people. And now, the priests or elders walk in with torches. Why? The leading theory is that these buildings were never meant to last forever. They were built for a specific cycle, maybe a generation, maybe for the life of a chief. And when that cycle ended, the building had to die. Picture the flames roaring into the Scottish night sky. The heat would be intense, pushing the crowd back. The sparks would fly up to join the stars. The structure, which represented the body of the community, is transformed from wood into light and ash. It's a powerful concept. We modern humans try to preserve everything. We build museums. We want things to last forever. The Neolithic Scots understood that destruction is part of creation. The excavation found the ghost holes where the posts once stood, black circles of charcoal in the yellow soil. They also found shattered pottery near the entrance, likely smashed as a final toast to the dying building. This discovery changes our view of the savage past. These weren't people huddled in caves. These were architects of the ephemeral. They built magnificent palaces of wood, used them to celebrate life, and then, in a final act of spectacular theater, sent them to the gods in a pillar of fire. We are nearing the end of our global tour, and for discovery number 19, we are heading to the tropical archipelagos of Southeast Asia. We are landing on the spider-shaped island of Sulawesi, Indonesia. Now, usually, when we talk about ancient history, we are thinking in thousands of years. The pyramids are 4,500 years old. Göbekli Tepe is 11,000. But the discovery made in the Talepu Valley in 2025 forces us to change our clocks completely. We have to switch from thousands to millions. Archaeologists unearthed a layer of stone tools, sharp flakes used for cutting meat and pounding plants, that have been dated to 1 million years ago. This is a bombshell. Why? Because according to the textbooks, we shouldn't be there. Homo sapiens, modern humans, didn't evolve until roughly 300,000 years ago in Africa. So who on earth was making stone knives in Indonesia 1 million years ago? Let's go horizontal and step into this alien world. The Sulawesi of 1 million years ago was a lost world, straight out of a fantasy novel. It sat behind the Wallace Line, a deep ocean trench that separated the biology of Asia from Australia. Even during the Ice Ages, when sea levels dropped, this trench remained a formidable water barrier. Tigers and rhinos couldn't cross it. But somehow, a mysterious species of human did. Imagine standing in that ancient rainforest. It's humid. The ferns are waist-high. But the animals around you are wrong. You see a stegodon, an elephant, but it's tiny, the size of a cow. You see a giant tortoise, the size of a car, lumbering through the mud. And watching you from the trees might be a Komodo dragon, even bigger than the ones today. And in the middle of this strange zoo, there is a group of hominids. They are likely short, hairy, and muscular. They don't have language as we know it, but they have communication. They have fire. And they have the technology to take a hard river stone, strike it with precise geometry, and create a razor-sharp edge. The 2025 excavation found these tools right next to the butchered bones of the stegodons. This wasn't a random occurrence. This was a lunch break. The leading theory is that these are the ancestors of the famous hobbits, Homo floresiensis, found on the nearby island of Flores. Or perhaps they are a branch of Homo erectus, the first world travelers. But the horizontal mystery is the ocean. To get to Sulawesi, you have to cross the sea. Did they build rafts 1,000,000 years ago? The idea that primitive humans could navigate the ocean is mind-bending. It suggests that curiosity and the drive to explore are not unique to modern humans. They are built into our DNA, going back deeper than we ever imagined. Holding one of these jagged stones, you feel a connection to a ghost lineage. These people lived, loved, struggled, and died on this island for hundreds of thousands of years, completely cut off from the rest of the world. They are the Robinson Crusoes of human evolution. And until 2025, we didn't even know they were there. And now, we arrive at the end. Discovery number 20. We started this journey in the tombs of Egypt, and it is fitting that we end it in the shadow of a volcano. We are returning to Italy. We are returning to the city of ghosts, Pompeii. I know. We already visited Pompeii for the Blue Room. But late in 2025, excavations in the Porta Sarno necropolis area yielded a discovery so poignant, so emotionally devastating, that it became the defining image of the year. They found the fugitives of the gate. Usually the famous plaster casts of Pompeii show people curled up in the pugilist pose, their muscles contracted by the intense heat of the pyroclastic flow. They are frozen in agony. But these new victims were different. The archaeologists found a small group, an adult believed to be a mother and 2 young children. They weren't inside a house. They were making a run for it. They had made it as far as the city gate, the exit to the road that led to the sea. They were mere feet away from freedom. But they didn't make it. The surge caught them. The ash hardened around them, creating a perfect negative mold of their final moments. When the team poured the plaster in, or used the modern resin method, the result was heartbreaking. The mother isn't curled up. She is shielding the children. Her cloak is pulled over their heads. One of the children is clutching something in his hand. It's a small iron key. Let's go horizontal. This isn't just a skeleton. This is a story. It's August 24th, 79 AD. The sky is black at noon. Pumice stones are raining down like hail, smashing roofs. The ground is shaking. The noise is like a jet engine screaming in your ear. This woman grabs her kids. She grabs the key to their house. The house she assumes they will return to tomorrow when the storm passes. That key represents hope. It represents the denial of disaster. We just need to leave for a bit. We will come back. They run through the dark streets, stepping over debris, coughing in the sulphurous air. They reach the gate. They can smell the sea air mixing with the ash. They are so close. And then The mountain exhales. A wall of superheated gas, moving at 100 miles per hour, rolls down the slopes. It's over in a split second. The key stays in the child's hand for 2,000 years. The 2025 discovery of this group reminds us why we do archaeology. It's not just about the gold of Thutmose II. It's not just about the tax tablets of Jerusalem or the massive temples of the Maya. It's about the people. It's about the mother who tried to protect her kids. It's about the child who held on to the house key. It's about the warrior who loved his horse and the sailor who prayed to Odysseus. These discoveries are mirrors. When we look into the dirt, we see ourselves. We see our own fears, our own ambitions, and our own fragility. The year 2025 has given us a gift. It has allowed us to touch the hands of our ancestors and say, "We see you. We haven't forgotten you." History is not a flat page in a book. It is a three-dimensional, living, breathing tragedy and triumph. And if this year has taught us anything, it's that the earth is still full of stories waiting to be told. We just have to keep digging. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Until next time, keep your eyes on the ground. You never know what you might find. So there you have it. 20 stories. 20 fragments of the human experience pulled from the mud, the sand, and the sea. We have stood in the golden light of a pharaoh's tomb and shivered in the freezing winds of the Antarctic. We have seen the grandeur of a Maya megalopolis and the intimate heartbreak of a mother's final moment in Pompeii. If looking at these discoveries has taught us anything, it is that the past is not a foreign country. The people who built those temples, carved those stones, and sailed those ships were not primitive. They were us. They had the same brains, the same ambitions, the same fears, and the same capacity for love that we do today. We are living in a golden age of archaeology. Technology, from AI to LIDAR to DNA analysis, is allowing us to see the invisible. We are reading the unreadable. We are finding the unfindable. The history books aren't just being updated. They are being rewritten every single week. And the most exciting part? We have barely scratched the surface. Experts estimate that we have excavated less than 1% of what lies beneath our feet. There are more kings waiting to be found, more lost cities hiding in the jungle, more ships resting in the deep. So, as you go about your day in 2025, remember the lesson of the key from Pompeii. Hold on to what matters. Build your own cathedrals, whether they are made of stone or wood. And never stop wondering what lies just beneath the surface. If you enjoyed this marathon journey through time, make sure you are subscribed. The year is far from over, and the ground is still talking. I'm your host, and I'll see you in the next dig. Stay curious.